Welcome back to WNHH-FM's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. A visitor to town is making New Haven tick. His name is Stephen Krashen. Did I say it right?
Yeah, you got it.
All right. He's hitting Wilbur Cross, Southern Connecticut State University, Yale, and right now WNHH. Tell us about his cutting-edge ideas about language acquisition, how we speak to each other, and how we speak other tongues. Welcome to WNHH, Professor Krashen.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here.
And thanks to New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. So what brings you to town? Why are you touring institutes of higher ed and public schools?
Yes, I'm here for the reasons I go anywhere. People invite me, which is very nice because they want to know what's going on with language acquisition. And the reason they invited me in particular is our work over the last 45 years in language acquisition.
Now, language acquisition means learning to speak and read a language?
It means acquiring a language.
What does acquiring
talk about
mean?
Acquiring, we talk about learning. Learning is what you did in school, learning all the rules, practicing them, studying them, doing verb conjugations, and that doesn't work very well, as most of us know. Acquiring means picking it up, and it happens when you understand when someone tells you something or when you understand what you read, and it happens subconsciously, and that is the breakthrough. For the last 45 years, we've been working on what we call the comprehension hypothesis. And it says we acquire language when we understand what people tell us and when we understand what we read. And this is a major, major breakthrough. Our language classes, foreign language, the reason that none of us did very well in language classes in school is that it was all based on conscious learning, knowing the rules, getting errors corrected, study, and that doesn't work very well.
Now, you're a linguist. You're a professor emeritus at University of Southern California. You have over 486 publications in fields of language.
Come on, Paul. 541 as of this morning.
Well, then you got to update your website.
Well, it happened this morning. Give me a break, dude.
Well, you write like 50 a day?
Not quite. Quite a few, because the research is so exciting. And I retired from the university about 13 years ago, which gives me a lot more time.
So big implications from what you study about how we're going to teach. So are you partly saying don't teach conjugations, teach more speaking out like the Ulpans in Israel?
Listening, and reading. What happened to me on the Ulpan, which is Hebrew instruction, basically on kibbutz-type environments, it's better than that. It's comprehensible. What happened to us on the Ulpan, I was there with my wife. We worked in the fields in the morning, took Hebrew classes in the afternoon, and the last 30 minutes was the teacher telling stories, into her version of Bible stories. And that's, I think, what made the difference with me. It's where I got Hebrew. It was listening to these stories and forgetting that it was in another language, which is the key. It was so interesting, we were riveted.
And were you also learning by being in the fields and someone says,
Sure, and we had conversation, but what really counted were hearing those stories. I'm convinced of that now.
So what would you do in schools? Would you revolutionize what we do in the classroom?
I sure hope so. We're trying to make it more pleasant, more exciting. Beginning language teaching now for us is stories, hearing lots of stories.
But like, let's say I'm first day a kid. Let's say I'm in English second language class.
Yep.
And I know Spanish. I sit down, the teacher's talking English, and starts telling me the story of Jacob's coat.
Too complicated.
Okay.
We'd start with something simpler. We'd start with a picture and say, this is the one I used in the beginning. This is Mr. Spock. Here's Mr. Spock. He has 2 ears, he has a nose, he has a mouth, and he has a cigarette. But the cigarette is no good. We don't like cigarettes, etc. And you make it funny, you have some jokes, and you gradually expand. You can talk about Mr. Spock's children, his girlfriends, his life.
But you're drawing as you do it.
You're drawing, you're making it comprehensible. And when you need to, you can do occasional translation. In the Ulpan class I was in, all the students were helping out. So there's a word you didn't know. Someone who knew French would give that little translation. Someone who knew English would give that little
And then by saying, this is Mr. Spock, you're also teaching the kid the words, this is, by having it happen in conversation.
It's picked up.
And what about reading?
Acquired. Reading is comprehensible text. Stories that are fascinating, that are interesting. The intermediate stage of language teaching is reading for pleasure. Beginning with texts that are easy to understand based on the stories you heard in class, to simplified texts.
So you'd go to a Mr. Spock story. You would link what you were talking about and showing the student with a text that's the same story, so that then you make that translation.
A little better, a little bit more interesting. My colleague in Japan, Beniko Mason, uses Grimm's fairy tales, Grimm stories. that can be made very comprehensible, very interesting. She draws pictures, does an occasional translation.
So I'm not a linguist. My daughter actually was a linguistics major, but
no kidding.
Yeah, she loved it. She fell in love with it in high school. But my very ignorant view, simplistic, is how interesting it was to watch my two kids learn to read and talk.
Yes.
And how they do it differently. There's no one size fits all. And in my simplistic view, it was the old phonics versus whole word debate. So
yes. We'll get there.
One kid did what you kind of said people don't do, if I had you right, which really look at the rules and learned it by sounding out every syllable like phonics. The other kid would watch and listen to what people say, look at a group of text and words together, and get a general meaning by picking up that way. Okay. When I heard you earlier, were you kind of suggesting that most people were like my younger daughter, the latter, or is just everybody different?
Let me try to settle the whole phonics debate. Right here. The whole thing is comprehension. And I've been in the middle of the big phonics debates years and years. It's really quite simple. We learn to read by understanding what's on the page. A little bit of phonics, not a lot of it, because the rules are too complicated. Nobody even knows them, is going to help make texts more comprehensible. So we teach the alphabet, we teach initial consonants, a few vowels, and that's about it.
What about past and future?
No, we're talking about learning to read.
Yeah, when you're reading, don't you want to know if a verb is past tense or future tense?
You acquire that. It's picked up. The rules of grammar and the rules of phonics are so complicated that nobody can learn them.
But some people,
we haven't even finished describing them.
So when you're learning music, you learn a scale.
Yep.
And a very rigid way or rule. Like when you're doing a major scale, you don't put in a minor seventh. But eventually, you need to be freed from that. So some people, like Paul McCartney, learn the bass without learning any of that. He learned it just by listening and working the fretboard.
The Beatles, the Beach Boys, and the Bee Gees, none of them could read music.
But some people do, right?
Some
people
do,
and
some
then
don't.
And so is it one way or the other?
It's comprehension and getting a feel for it with everybody. That part is universal. Some people can make things more comprehensible with a little bit of conscious knowledge, but not very much. There's a limit to what conscious knowledge can do for you. For everyone, it's comprehension. For some people, the conscious knowledge is a little bit helpful, other people not. The core is comprehension. That's why we call it the comprehension hypothesis. So if I talk to you in a language you don't know very well and I make it comprehensible, you're acquiring the language subconsciously, especially if I make it so interesting that you forget that it's in another language. Then it's really happening, which is what our Hebrew teacher did. The story was so engaging.
And we're talking about acquiring language.
Right.
With an expert in the field, Professor Stephen Krashen, who's making the rounds of town today to promote his ideas. So why is it that when we're young, we're able to acquire language so more quickly? And why I've been working in a Spanish language newspaper for 10 years, and all I can say is te veo en una hora, I'll see in an hour, but I can't say te veo in 2 horas, 2 hours. Why is it so much harder?
First of all, our research on age differences, adults are faster.
Adults are faster.
No kidding. Absolutely. One of my buddies.
That hasn't been my experience.
If you get comprehensible input, adults are faster. Paul, have never been in a situation, pobrecito, where you've never had really interesting, comprehensible messages that you understood and that you thought were fascinating. When we even the playing field and adults get those messages they understand and think are interesting, adults acquire very, very well. Adults are very good. They don't get it perfect. They only get 99.9%.
But they teach the kids, they put the kids in the immersion schools like New Haven. We have a couple schools like Columbus schools that are dual language schools, and they find the kids learn the languages quickly. When I took multiple languages in school and did learn them and then forgot them and can't get them back. But am I just an anomaly?
No, you're normal.
I'm just not getting the opportunities you're saying.
Yeah, that's it. You need the comprehensible input. You need messages you understand that are interesting. I'll say that again and again. When we all get that, we all acquire languages easily, subconsciously. The problem is it rarely happens. We fill our classes full of wonderful stories people acquire. We get people reading books they understand, they acquire. I got this buddy, Steve Kaufman, who speaks 15 languages, no kidding. He's done 8 of them since let me finish. He's done 8 of them since age 62.
Wow.
There's no age limit. I am now 78. I know I look a lot younger.
You do.
Yeah, I look 75.
You got a lot of energy, man.
Yeah, coffee does it. And I'm still doing these languages. It's part of my research to be always active with languages, and it's going very well.
So
When
now
I-
you're bringing the message to New Haven today.
Yeah.
What are you hoping people will do differently when you leave? Tell stories, language acquisition. Specifically, what's going to happen differently at Hill Central School?
Okay. Most of the people I've talked to here already know this stuff. Even if they haven't heard me speak or read my incomprehensible papers, they know about it through experience. They have seen it. They're looking for someone to tell them it's okay. Because usually people in charge of it who are well-meaning amateurs who haven't been in a classroom for 20 years and don't have this deep sense of how children learn don't know about it. So the teachers are looking for me to give them permission. I'm kind of their hitman.
Now
To tell them they're not crazy.
Well, it's good to have a hitman like you. We
Oh,
need that.
God,
But
I
now
love
we're
it.
in a data-driven era. They
Yep.
also respond to a whole system, a whole school system that is prioritizing metrics. What did the kids learn? What score on the test?
Fine, we do better on the tests. The amount that you read is the best reading for pleasure that you select yourself is
Sure.
by far the best predictor of how well you do on standardized reading
And
tests.
where are we at digitization? Do you feel that reading print published material helps you learn better than reading on a screen?
I don't know. It's a great question that has not thoroughly been researched.
I'm interested in
Probably
that
either.
question.
Yeah, I know we all are. I have the same thing. Because my age, I still love books, but I do a lot of reading on the screen. Again, if it's comprehensible text, doesn't seem to matter. I'm
Okay.
sympathetic to both.
All right. And
But
that's
we
kinda
do
where
have the metrics. I
wonder.
want to emphasize that. That's why I do all these publications.
And that's why kids who
Study
grow
after
up
study.
reading early and talking early do well in standardized tests without the courses.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Oh, yes.
so Dr. Krashen, the theory of effective, that's AFFECTIVE,
Yep.
filter, about emotional filters that stop us from learning. What exactly is this? What gets in my way of learning emotionally?
The biggest one is the input is not compelling enough.
Tell me what an input is.
Input means
The
you're
story?
someone talking to you, you're reading. We want it to be so interesting that you forget that it's in another language. When that happens, the affective problems absolutely disappear. You don't have to worry about motivation. When you have a teacher that tells you a terrific story, it doesn't matter if you're interested, that you want to learn the language, you get involved in the story and language acquisition happens. That's the way our brains are made, and it's the only possible way it could be done.
Right, we're always making connections
Pardon?
to our own lives, to a
Oh,
story.
yes.
Yeah.
We find it
Interesting.
fascinating, which is why self-selection is so important in literacy. Things that you decide you want to read.
Yeah.
Kurt Vonnegut tells this great story. He says, because I was an English lit major in college, people are always giving me books by the Bronte sisters or Jane Austen, and I walk past them, and there they are staring down from my shelves, making me feel guilty. Books as gifts are assigned reading. You've got to choose it yourself.
But sometimes when your person knows what you like in my family, we know what each other likes, and we get
Then it
excited to
works.
get the
There's
books.
one person who will give me advice that I listen to, and that's my son, who's coming here, by the way, this afternoon. He was a postdoc.
So now
at Yale
there's a
for
movement with AI, artificial intelligence. I know one guy, a friend of mine, who was working on a company to help learn new languages, second languages, by using big data to monitor what people are stumbling over as they work through language on a screen, and that you can identify each person's roadblock. That sounds very different from what you're talking about.
It is very different. I have not seen research on it. Certainly people have acquired languages beautifully without that. We know that. What you want is text that's really exciting for you, where you get lost in the book, lost in the story.
Yeah.
Then it happens.
Old debate, probably 89 chapters ago in your professional development, was the bilingual debate.
Yes.
There was a division within the Latino community here, though you rarely heard it, about whether bilingual education was a good goal, whether people coming here from, we have many people moving here from Latin America.
Simple answer. Simple answer is bilingual education works when it pushes English, and it does that very well. Good bilingual programs give you background knowledge in your first language. That makes English input more comprehensible. A child who's had math, let's say in Spanish, when he goes into math class, he understands more math taught in English. He gets more English, he gets more math. Good bilingual programs, when they're set up correctly, and that's the easy way, actually promote English and do it very, very well. Good research on this.
Well, I would say you promote your ideas very, very well.
Oh, gosh.
Dr. Stephen Krashen, what a delight it's been to just get a taste of these great theories.
I've always
bringing
liked
to
you,
town.
Paul. Thank you.
Yeah, I like you too. Thanks for coming in, and good luck in the rest of your visits today to Wilbur Cross, Southern, Yale, and spreading the gospel.
All right, you
Acquiring
bet.
language.
Thank you.
Thanks to Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program, and thanks to WNHA station manager Harry Droz, the miracle man behind the controls. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew. how it would feel to be free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.